Alrighty, guys, it is March 29th, and we've got ourselves a balance patch. So, the first thing that I want to cover in this, I don't have my camera on, so I'm going to do my best to go through pretty quickly on these. It's been a little while since we've had a balance patch, I think like 8 to 10 weeks, something like that. Rehgar's been very, very strong. As always, I'm going to tell you guys how it's going to affect most games, as well as how it's going to affect the competitive scene. I might make a mention about ARAM if there's a change that's kind of specific to ARAM or one that's going to make a huge difference in ARAM. But otherwise, I'll generally explain how it affects like your standard Storm League games and how it's going to affect like the upper levels of competitive gameplay. With that being said, let's start going right into it. Anub'arak's getting some buffs to underutilized talents. So, put simply, he's getting a buff to Nerubian armor at level 1 from 20 to 25 spell armor. Now, this is a rather significant change. You'd think that this is a 5% increase, but it's actually much more than that. And part of the reason why comes down to kind of how armor works with math again. And someone in the comments will correct me because I'm sure I'm going to do this wrong. But he has 40 armor when he uses W. When you add in 20 armor, you're effectively taking the armor that he had, or the available damage that you could deal. When he has 40 armor, you can do 60% of your normal spell damage. But when he has 60 armor, you can only do 40%. Well, the difference between 40% and 60%, 60% is 50% more than 40%. 60% is 50% more than 40%. That sounds so confusing. But put simply, a small change like 20 can be equal to a lot more. Purely because what's left over. Now, when we bump this up to 65, what's left is 35. So, again, the difference between 35 and 40 is a lot more than 5% if you're actually looking at how much damage is left that you can actually deal. So it's actually a surprisingly large thing. It's the same way of if someone in a game had 98% damage reduction, right, and they added 1% of damage reduction, you'd be at 99% damage reduction. That's a 100% increase in damage reduction. And that's why small changes when you're reducing the damage you can deal are actually very significant. So this is a surprisingly strong talent change that it was already a very solid talent. The Beetle talents have definitely gained a lot of popularity, but this build is still a meta build that's used in competitive when the enemies have high burst or they have like damage over time like Blaze's Fire, because the level 7 talent allows you to get it off cooldown faster if they have small bits of magic damage. Level 7 Subterranean Shields being buffed. It's a good talent for a variety of builds. A lot of people are taking this instead of the heal talent with the Beetles, even if they're still going Beetle talents, because it allows them to have a lot more survivability in bursts rather than sustained. Level 13 Eradicating Spines. And if I'm butchering the pronunciation, I apologize. The damage being increased. Keep in mind, this is doubled to heroes. So a 10% increase scaled and doubled to heroes could be pretty decent, making W build even stronger. Acid Drench Mandibles is being buffed. Duration's being buffed. Crypt Weave is being buffed. What will this do? Overall, I feel like W build is going to be stronger and competitive in more situations. And I would say it's almost on par with Beetle build right now. It just depends on the situation on when you want to take which build. If you can really abuse the spell armor, I would say just go W build. And if they've got like hooks or anything that you can block with beetles, or if the fights are going to be like really long and drawn out, or you need beetles to like interrupt channels, I would say go beetle build. But you still get beetles to interrupt channels even in W build. So the only major difference is your beetles are going to be a little bit more durable, and there's going to be an extra one here and there. Johanna, she's been dominant for quite a while, and even after the last nerfs, I've said that she probably doesn't need to be first ban or first picked anymore, and her win rate certainly did drop. But these changes are going to probably put her back in that moment where she's still going to be very strong, but will be a lot weaker than she was. Bonus damage for her E talents dropping from 125 to 75. It doesn't do a lot of damage, so this change isn't going to be that big of a deal, but it's definitely a needed change. Roar. Maximum punish damage bonus is being reduced. Blessed Hammers. Basic ability cooldown reduction is being reduced. Heaven's Fury. It can now hit more targets, but it reduces the cooldown by less. So it's going to be harder to get those easy resets, because instead of getting 6 seconds back, which if you just jumped over like one person, getting multiple procs of 6 seconds could shave off half the cooldown of your ult by just hitting one person. Generally, you're going to hit at least 2 or 3, which means that you'd be left with like a less than 10-second cooldown. That being said, they're making it harder to get that, and it's going to make the cooldown reduction less impactful. The damage is also being nerfed again. Last time I believe the healing and damage was nerfed, so now we're kind of at a point where it's definitely a lot weaker, and I would personally only take this talent if you have a really good reason to. My reasons for this is the first talent, taking Falling Sword is kind of a risk. You're getting a delayed stun, and delayed stuns are less valuable. So you need to really have a good reason, and the good reason was Heaven's Fury. But the problem is now, with them nerfing Heaven's Fury multiple times, is it's less of an automatic win when you get to 20, and now you basically are taking a weaker level 10 to then increase your level 20, but it's at a huge risk. It's kind of like taking Leoric and going March and taking all the W talents, because you know when you get the level 20 March, you're going to be very, very strong. You're giving up so much more of Leoric's kit to do that. The same is kind of true with Johanna. I would say this is still a solid pick if you're in a solo lane and you've got a tank that's got a reliable engage, because then they can reliably engage, and then you can make your team unstoppable and heal them and stuff. Or again, if you really needed a cleanse, you have a secondary engage with your team, and you need a cleanse. They've got like a Varian taunt into mind control, and you know if you don't cleanse, then whoever's going to get taunted in mind control is going to be dead in 4 seconds. So I could see situations like that where it's good, but I wouldn't prioritize it anymore. I still think Johanna will be a top tier tank. Overall, she's still going to be very solid. I think her win rate will drop a little bit, probably around the balanced area. I would say she's going to be around like a 52-53% win rate. We have Artanis. He's getting a couple nerfs actually. Health nerf, health regen nerf, shield is being reduced, and shield surge trait is being buffed. To kind of bring back the nerf a little bit if you do take that talent. Overall, I think this is a strange one. Artanis has been pretty strong in kind of the climbing ranks, but he tends to fall short when you get to around Masters or when you get into competitive play. Artanis is one of those heroes that I feel like if you're a good Artanis, you can pretty easily get from like silver up to like high plat. But most Artanis players kind of just sit around, like Artanis mains tend to sit around that like high plat, low diamond area, purely because he just doesn't bring a lot of what you need, and he can get stuck in fights really easily. So while he does win most 1v1s, he can struggle. I don't think these changes are going to affect him very much, other than drop his win rate by just a 0.5%. Thrall, he's getting a health buff, a health regen buff, and level 20 Elemental Momentum's passive cooldown reduction against heroes is going from doubled to tripled. There's something kind of interesting about this talent in one particular build. Let me bring up Hero's profile really quick. So if I was to bring up Thrall, which I spell this wrong, or we don't have the new patch. Let me ditch this and I'll just go into the last couple patches. Okay, so let me go in here. Let's type in Thrall. We'll pull up Thrall. And there's something kind of interesting about this build. And the thing that I was going to mention is Wind Fury grants twice as many stacks of Frostwolf's Resilience. You go Tempest Fury and your Wind Fury procs 3 times. This is a build that I recommended a lot because you can get your trait procced very, very quickly. And you used to take Wind Rush so that you could get 2 procs of both of these talents. But with Elemental Momentum, it's interesting. Basic attacks reduce Thrall's basic and heroic ability cooldowns, by 0.25 seconds, doubled against heroes. Well, instead of taking Windrush, you could potentially still take both of these talents. This one isn't as relevant, but this one procs 3 times. So it reduces basic and heroic cooldowns by 0.25 seconds. It's doubled against heroes to 0.5 seconds. Now it's tripled against heroes, so it's 0.75 seconds, which is pretty close to a second. So your E will shave off about 5 seconds of all of your ability cooldowns, including your E. But one other thing that it does that's kind of interesting is if you're taking like Sundering, you don't need World Breaker. And if you take Echo of Elements, you have a lower cooldown on your Q, right? You get a second charge. Mana Tide keeps the cooldown low. Grace of Air or Frostwolf keeps the cooldown even lower. You could keep the cooldown. I mean, you could shave off every Sundering. You could potentially shave off like 20 to 30 seconds because you can lower your cooldown on anything, right? I guess it is only basic attacks, right? I thought it was basic abilities, but it only reduces it by... So it's just basic attacks. So the only thing that would matter is the E-talents. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting buff. I don't think it's going to make a major difference, though, unfortunately, as much time as I spent on it. I don't think it's going to make a major difference, to be honest. The health differences are pretty good. Like Blizzard said, he's very close to being competitive. Thrall's tricky because he's one of the few heroes where, when he was meta, he could hold his own in every matchup. There wasn't a major counter to Thrall. So when he was strong, it was just kind of a hero you were safe to always pick because he could poke ranged heroes away. So whenever people would throw like Junkrat, Greymane, or Phoenix top, he could poke them down with his Q and Echo of Elements and keep them kind of dealt with. And whenever there was a melee hero, he would win a lot of trades with the Ancestral Wrath. Because it allows him to drain more health than he takes. And so he actually won a lot of matchups when he's overtuned. So the big challenge with Thrall is small changes like even 20 health can make a major difference in where his power level is. But I don't think this is going to do anything major for him. If Thrall was good for your team comp, you can continue running him. If you like Thrall, you can still play him in Storm League. Varian, Heroic Strike, cooldowns being reduced. Lion's Maw, damage per stacks being increased. Colossal Smash, damage being increased. Armor reduction is being increased. So basically, they're trying to buff Colossal Smash. Lion's Maw buff also helps the people that were playing Taunt Varian with Lion's Maw. But I've mentioned this in the math before. Generally, Overpower is the highest damage, assuming you're not going to be blinded and you're not going to be stunned. If you're going to get blinded or stunned, then taking the Q talent is more. But if you're not going to get blinded or stunned, Overpower ends up being something like 8 to 10 times more damage than Lion's Maw. So overall, I would say this is a pretty good buff to Colossal Smash, but I still probably wouldn't be using Colossal Smash in competitive play, and I wouldn't expect to see it in competitive play. Outside of competitive play, if you have a good reason to draft it, maybe. But I think, honestly, it needs some wave clear for me to safely take Colossal Smash. I don't know what they could do to give it wave clear, but I feel like that's what it would need to make that viable. Something that you're like double soaking and then you get like an opportunity to like jump on someone while you're double soaking. That's what I feel like Colossal Smash needs, but could be too strong. I'm not a game designer. Alexstrasza, she's getting some buffs. Her Q baseline is now going to have something that just increases her health regen by 150%. Keep in mind, this is increased by 150%. This means that she's going to have 2.5 times health regen compared to other heroes with similar health. That's a very significant increase in health regen to the point that you probably won't even need to pick up every flower if you're in Q build to keep yourself topped off, which is really, really nice. Then they also are buffing her level 16 talents. Q, change functionality. Gift of Life grants its target 10 armor, but it's 30 armor while she's above 75% health. So I never liked this talent because when you Q a target in the front line, which is the area that needs armor the most, you're generally dropping a flower that you can't pick up. So even though you're giving them armor, which is great, you're losing health and you're not going to get that back. They've kind of made this a little bit better by saying, okay, well, if you are losing a lot of health healing your front line, you can still give them armor, it just won't be as much as what it was before. Then we have overprotective. Shield durations being increased from 3 to 6 seconds. The reason I don't like this talent is it gives you a shield based on the amount of health healed, instead of giving a shield based on how much your W would have healed. If you heal someone at full health with this, it doesn't give them a shield at all. So I generally don't like this talent. And so the meta talent ended up being Draconic Discipline, which was increase the duration of your dragon form by, I think, 6 seconds. Now it makes it to where the dragon form's basic attacks also heal an additional 50%, or increased it by 50%, since they already heal. So overall, I would say Draconic Discipline's still going to be the meta talent for her. However, I think there is a world where you can go Tough Love now, because it'll be easier to keep that 75% health, and if it does go below, it still does something. I would actually almost be tempted to see if you could run a Q build without the flower pickup talent, and then just heal yourself with either the passive, your W, or even just with your ult. I'm curious to see how that would work with this increase. I'll need to see how much it actually is in game. Alexstrasza does sit as one of the lowest win rates for healers. She was actually the healer I used primarily to get to Grandmasters. And my thing is she has maps that she's really good on, but she's a lot harder than people think she is. All of her abilities seem very easy, but the timing is what makes Alexstrasza very difficult. So I think her win rates are a little deflated because she seems so approachably easy to play, but she really isn't. That being said, I think these buffs are pretty good. Will it make her very strong? Probably not. I do think it'll allow her to slot into the competitive scene a little bit more, though, purely because this does add a lot of early game healing, which is something that she lacked. As far as the standard Storm League games, I think this will bump up her win rate quite a bit. Probably not up to 50%, but maybe she'll barely hit the 50%. Rehgar, he's been dominant. He's going to see some nerfs. Health nerf, health regen nerf, purge cooldown, which was also his cleanse, is being increased. I actually was watching a Storm Division game earlier, which is a Nexus Gaming Series tournament. It's the highest level of play. Storm Division's the highest level of play in Nexus Gaming Series. And I actually called out a game, and this is so funny because I'm pretty sure this happened yesterday or the day before. I called this out to a friend of mine that I was watching, and I said, if his cleanse cooldown was 60 seconds, they would have lost this game. And it's so funny that I called this out yesterday. Like, it was either yesterday or the day before. I literally called this out, and I said they would have lost this game. And it was because they were playing against, it wasn't a Varian, but I think it was a Anub'arak Sylvanas. And Mind Control was going out, and he had just gotten his purge off cooldown. When this Mind Control hit, he purged it, and this was like a 3v3 level like 24 on Tomb of the Spider Queen, and he cleansed it, and it was just enough that their team was able to back off, get healed up, regroup, and go back in. But that would have been the pick needed for the other team to win boss. And they would have ended the game with boss. It's crazy. So something as simple as that can change a game. Colossal Totem, the health is being reduced, so it'll be easier to kill. Earth Living, Enchant, the healing is being reduced. That's the heal over time if they're below half. Grounded Totem, the attack speed is basically they're nerfing E build a lot. Like I've been saying for a while, W build is still very, very strong. But And E-build is still going to be very strong. You still have a 90% slow. You still have the healing coming out on your 13 talent. And the health difference isn't that big of a deal. It still does the radius. Like, it still is going to be a good build. And I would say E-build is probably still going to be above 50% win rate. W-build is still going to be above 50% win rate. But our goal is to get both of those builds under that 55% win rate, which is where he still, I think, is like a 56 or 57%. Whitemane, she's been kind of out of the meta for a little bit. She's used in a couple comps, competitive compositions, and she's also used as a counter pick to certain comps that enemies might do that are little like AoE burst type comps. And so there's definitely some pros and cons. They're reducing the mana cost of her Q, and they are increasing the mana cost per desperation reduced from 45 to 40. So what that's going to do is it's going to make your Q easier to cast without any stacks, and it's going to make your Q easier to cast. There's a lot of double negatives here. Your Q is going to be easier to cast either way, whether you have 0 stacks or you have any amount of stacks. Zeal, armor reduction reduced from 25 to 15. You could activate Zeal to increase your spell power, but you would have armor reduction on yourself. So now they're making this to where it's less scary to press that button. Intercession is her cleanse. It's no longer granting desperation, which was what made it harder to cast your Q. Its cast range is also being increased. It was about half the size of cleanse, and it's getting a little bit bigger now. Radiance, change functionality. Radiance heal now reapplies Zeal, resetting its duration. No longer affects Whitemane's armor. Radiance was a talent, I believe, that when you cast Q on 3 different people, it heals everyone, or it's once you have your 3rd Zeal out, it heals everyone with Zeal. Let me double check that, because I don't want you guys to be misled by me. So let me go down to Whitemane really quick. So Radiance is, upon reaching 3 stacks of desperation, all allies with Zeal are healed. Now it's going to reapply Zeal to everyone that has it. So there's a little bit of a trick with this. And I can't remember exactly how to do it. From my understanding, your W, and I might do it baseline, but your W should reduce 1 stack of your desperation. So you could technically throw your Q on 3 different people, and then you could remove 1 desperation, and you can throw a Q on a 4th person, and you can do 2 really big heals. And in fact, I think with the new change, that's actually probably really competitive. So it no longer affects your armor, which it used to give you 15 armor whenever you did that. Yeah, 3 stacks of desperation now increases your armor by 15. It doesn't do that anymore. Wait, does it increase or decrease? Oh, it allows your trait to increase it instead of decreasing it. It doesn't really matter. But that's actually really interesting. We'll need to double check that. I might actually launch Heroes of the Storm and throw her in try mode, because I'm curious about that one. They're buffing up the chain damage of her shared punishment from 70 to 100%, meaning you will do the full damage to the target you're casting W on, and you'll do full damage to a secondary target. Harsh Discipline and additional functionality reduces its cooldown by 2 seconds. Overall, I feel like this could make her a pretty consistent main healer, because you're less punished to get your desperation, and when you are getting desperation, you're less punished for doing this huge heal. This actually used to be a pretty meta build for a while, where in fact I brought out a video about how strong Radiance was when Whitemane launched, and I basically said that her initial playstyle was throw Qs on a bunch of people, and you'll heal like your whole team more than the enemy team can out heal or out damage. And then you can do it like 1 or 2 more times before you run out of mana, right? And then we changed it. They nerfed this, and they also nerfed the way we were doing it. And then they reworked her. So this hasn't been possible for a while, but I think there's a way to do it again. So let me go to Whitemane really quick, because I think there is a way to do this. And then I'll go through the rest of this really quickly, but I want to make sure that this is something that you can still do. So, so we're going to set the level at 16. We're going to ditch the ally hero. We don't need the ally hero. We're going to ditch the Arthas. So your W removes a stack of desperation. So does your clemency. So the trick here is, yeah, we're already 16. We can take literally anything. It doesn't really matter. Let's just take the Q talents. So Zeal increases. Let's go movement speed, because we'll be able to move around a lot. 2 stacks of Desperation grants you Desperate, or grants you Zeal. We're going to take that, although they did just buff that. We want to give Zeal to all of our people on our team, but we could get away with either talent because we're going to be applying Zeal really easily, so we could go Divine Reckoning. It just depends on the enemy comp, I would imagine. Do they have a lot of mobility, or are we going to be locking them down? Anything like that, we'll take Divine Reckoning, that's fine. Basic attacks increase Zeal duration. We're going to be resetting Zeal duration, so that's not a big deal. We could take... that's just cooldown reduction. That's damage reduction. Let's take damage reduction. And then we're going to do this. So basically what's going to happen is this. You Q someone, we're going to Q again. That's going to apply Zeal to myself, and we're going to heal. And then we're going to W to heal both of us, and then we're going to heal again. And it does do that. So I reset my Desperation, but I still had Zeal on everyone. So if you hit Desperation again... Hold on, I need to actually cancel this, right? So we go 1, 2, applies it to me. Then we do that, and we do a big heal again. And then you can let your Desperation drop, and you can use your mana to do it one more time, probably. So 3 times you can basically heal everyone on your team for 328. And you would burn your entire mana bar, but that's essentially not just the Q heals, but your Q heals for 262. So 328 on everyone on your team is, I mean, that's like 15% of my health. And then you could also bump it up by giving yourself spell power for 5 seconds, right? Or it's for 8 seconds, actually. No. 5 seconds. So you could heal yourself. I'm just curious really quick. Toggle cooldowns. So it would be heal, and then you'd heal someone else most likely. You'd apply it to yourself and one other person. Then you'd heal. You would do some damage. We would heal again to pop it. We'd throw like an ult out. We'd let it drop fully this time. And then you could heal, heal, heal. And I got my mana back because I was using Divine Reckoning. So you do want to go Divine Reckoning in this build. Interesting. So there's a Whitemane build that you could basically full heal your team 6 times, assuming that you get a good Divine Reckoning. Or you could potentially take Mana Talents somewhere. You could take Mana Talents here. I would need to look over the build to see, but enough of that. We'll go back to the patch notes. Sorry for the little detour, couple minute detour. So I would say that Whitemane in that build could actually be pretty strong. She'd have a huge power spike at level 16. Melee Assassins, Alarak. He's getting some buffs. Ruthless Momentum cooldown bonus is being increased. Negatively charged, the damage bonus stacks, and Lightning Barrage. So these 2 changes, just so you guys know, this resets him back to the point that he was being played in HGC. So he is back to where he was so strong in HGC that they had to nerf him. Now, this here was the talent that they had to nerf after a video that I brought out. He was so popular in what was the tournament? It wasn't NGS, it was Premier Series. He was so strong in Premier Series that they had to nerf this talent. So, if you were an old school Alarak player and you're great with him, he is back to his strongest that he's ever been in 2 different builds. Just saying. Take that information with what you want. He was never the highest win rate hero, so everyone who hasn't played Alarak thinking this is going to be like the time to play him, it certainly is a good time to play him. He's stronger than he's ever been, but he's very difficult to play effectively, and these builds can be pretty tricky. This build, specifically the E build, was played by Rich primarily, and it's a mechanically challenging build to play. This, I would say, if people in the competitive scene are willing to practice him, this brings him back in the competitive scene, but I don't know how many people are willing to practice him. So overall, I don't think we're going to see too much more of him, but I would expect to see some more. This also is pretty huge for ARAMs, just saying. Ranged Assassins, Cassia, I think it's weird that they said weapon damage instead of basic attack, but that's okay. Her damage is being increased. Her charge strike bonus is being increased. Her healing for basic attacks and abilities on blinded targets is being increased. Serf's Hymn cooldown reductions being increased. And martial law will now trigger in 2 ways. 1, you have your full armor, or 2, the target is blinded. So this will allow it to ramp up a lot faster because you can blind the target and just ramp it up immediately, and then you can move around so that you can keep martial law going. Overall, this is actually a pretty significant buff to auto attack build Cassia, and auto attack build Cassia is the one that's influenced most by blinds. So with Johanna being probably going to be banned a little bit less, I think Cassia is going to be a really strong 1-2 for a lot of situations. Overall, I think Cassia is still pretty good. Chromie slowing sands is being removed from ARM games. I'm gonna say thank you because that's it has been rather annoying. I know a lot of people want Chromie to be removed from ARMs, but honestly, Chromie herself is not that big of a problem, but this is. Gul'dan's getting some interesting changes. Improved life tap, is mana restorations being increased, consumes souls, the cooldown's being reduced, the maximum charges being increased, bound by shadow. Basically, they're buffing everything but W build. Bound by shadows, Q cooldown reduction increased from 1.5 to 1.75, which is what reduced the E cooldown when you cast Q, I think. I don't think that's at the point of it being meta or even played over his W talent, but his W talent's definitely dominant still. Spell armor is being increased. Dark bargain health bonus is being increased. Health stone cooldown reduction or cooldown reduced. So just an overall buff to all of his level 13 talents except for again his W. And level 16 rampant hellfire damage bonus per stack is being increased, and ruinous affliction 3rd hit damage is being increased. This is the old meta talent, and it's never been as strong as it is right now. But people are just taking all the W talents and the spell power talent at 16. I've always thought this was a pretty good build. Q build is a pretty good build in on Infernal Shrines because the extra range allows you to get a couple extra picks, but. Overall, I would say this probably doesn't change Gul'dan too much in the competitive scene, but I would say outside the competitive scene, Q and E build got pretty significant buffs, and his win rate will probably bump up a little bit. Sergeant Hammer, Ambush is being buffed, Advanced Artillery is being buffed, Maelstrom Rounds is being buffed, Hover Siege is being buffed, Graduating Range is being buffed, Shrapnel Mines is being buffed, Ultra Capacitors is being buffed and buffed. So, what does that mean? Well, most of these are underutilized talents, except for, of course, like level 1 where they buffed all of our talents. Honestly, Hover Siege is not underutilized. I don't really know. What I will say is this is a pretty major buff to Sergeant Hammer. If you were someone who played a lot of Sergeant Hammer before kind of the nerfs that she had in the past, definitely worth coming back to. And if you're someone who does have a hammer player on your team, you can bring back some hammer comms with maybe in the lower divisions, you can get away with like Sergeant Morales to stim drone. In the upper levels, people generally use Tyrael to give the increased movement speed or movement and attack speed on his level 7 talents to kind of give her abilities. But yeah, Sergeant Hammer's definitely a possibility again. Rehgar, a couple bugs are being fixed. Other than that, those are the changes for our March 29 balance patch. If you guys have anything else you'd like to add, you can always add it in the comments down below. Thank you all for watching, and let me know what's the thing you're most excited about in these changes. I personally feel like Whitemane and Alexstrasza are very interesting to me out of the changes that are in here. I feel like Anub'arak might be a tad too strong. I feel like maybe Alarak, once people get used to him again, might be a tad too strong. And potentially Sergeant Hammer, but it's just because I haven't seen her in so long, and I feel like she wasn't nerfed that bad. So seeing that basically everything got buffed makes me wonder about that a little bit. But I don't think any of these are going to be like Rehgar or Johanna levels of rework and they're at like 65% win rate. I do think that they will make some pretty big shifts though. And so I think overall this is a pretty good balance patch. Definitely excited about trying out that Whitemane build and just seeing how consistent I can keep that healing. Overall, Thank you all for watching, and feel free to check out my other videos.